Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Sunday Night Live, this 12th of March, 2023. Good grief, we are rattling through this month, and this year is going by incredibly quickly. Now, I know the Earth rotates at 15 degrees per hour, so time itself has not changed. I guess it's just my perception of time that's maybe changed a wee bit, and all of a sudden everything feels like we're just racing through the year. Probably because I'm super busy. And you're probably super busy as well. But anyway, welcome everybody. I hope everybody is doing well and has had a great week. Fantastic show on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. Thank you very much, everybody who was there, and for your fantastic questions. We had some absolute beauts of questions. In actual fact, the last several Songwriting Simplified shows and Sunday Night Live shows, we've had some really, really great questions. And I've been able to, don't know what that was, been able to help you guys out with some answers that actually were a little bit challenging. I had to actually, think quite a bit and dig deep into my knowledge and my experience. So I appreciate you guys giving me the challenge. But anyway, welcome to tonight's show. So if you have a Studio One question or a music production question or mixing or mastering question, get them into the chat right away. I would appreciate that because that way we can get the show underway. Let's go see who's here. We don't actually have that many in yet, so hopefully a few more people will come in. I have advertised the show around on a few of the Facebook groups and all of that, including the Persona Sphere group. So hopefully we'll get some folks over from there, which would be great. Now you'll notice I have had a haircut and I've removed my face carpet because I can stand for the first time in a week. Or at least I could stand long enough in front of the mirror to be able to do it. So managed to get it all done, which is great. I feel a lot better for it. I actually got out of the house today, which was very, very nice. I actually walked around the house, around the outside of the house for the first time in ages. So that was nice. And then tonight we went out for dinner. My wife managed to bag one of the parking spaces right outside the restaurant, so it was easy to get into. And it was really, really nice. We had a really, really nice time as a family, and it felt so good to be out of the house. It really did. So hopefully we are beginning to turn a corner. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I have had, and still do have, a bacterial infection called cellulitis, which is in my left leg at the moment. It has infected my left leg. And that's basically meant that my left leg has ballooned. It's swollen up quite a bit. And it has been incredibly painful. Still is pretty painful, but the pain is a lot less than it has been, which is nice. So I'm starting to think about reducing my meds, but I have to complete the antibiotics course, but I can certainly reduce some of the pain medication that I'm on, which would be really nice if I can do that. Because the thing with the pain meds is it makes my thinking so murky and muddy, and I forget how to finish a sentence. Just like then, actually, totally forgot how to finish that sentence. So that's one of the ways in which it's been affecting me. But anyway, let's go see who's here. We got Billy Morgan, who is first in the door, a couple of hours early, followed by the very delightful Christina is here as well. And Keith at Radio Tuck Frumpets is here, and Paul Morgan, and Mike Johnson, and Dave Barslow from Massachusetts is here, and my good and faithful awesome sponsor, Louis from Alps Media LLC is also here, and we got Low Ends, we got Donna Knight back again with us. She was here on Wednesday, which is great. Kyle Trajusiak is here. He says he may not be able to stay, which is a shame, but it's always good that he's here. And we've got Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories is here. And we got Just Bob is here as well, which is awesome. And he says thinking is good. Yes, most of the time it is. Absolutely. And we've got Dave's from Bops NY. And we've got Paparaptor Music as well. So we've got a good a good group of people, albeit it's very small. We've only got like 11 people here. So go, and I don't mind if a few people duck out to go and grab as many people as they can. It'd be nice if we could get towards our peak, which tends to be around about 20 or 25 people. So that would be cool. Otherwise, please get your Studio One mixing, mastering, music production kind of questions, get them into the chat, and we can get this show on the road, and we can start talking about our favorite DAW and how we use it, which would be very, very cool to do. Let's see, anything there yet? No, I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. Okay, I'm going to dive straight over to Studio One, and we're going to do something cool with this drum loop that I have in this particular song that I've got up and running at the moment. Oops, need to be on that screen. You can't see me. There we go. All right, so I've used this little loop, this little vamp a few times, and I've not really done a whole lot to it. Apart from we've got a little bit of processing on the Fender Rhodes. But this is what we've got so far. Now, this drum loop on its own sounds really, really cool, and I know it's already had some processing done to it, because it's basically a stereo drum loop. So it's already got some EQ and some compression on it, which is why it sounds so great. So, you know, if we just solo up that loop for just a minute. So it already sounds pretty cool. So what we're going to do is just do a little bit of compression on this. And there's a really nice compressor that I want to use. If I can remember where it is. Yeah, we're going to use this guy here, the MJUC by Klanghelm. Now this is pretty cool. If you've never seen the MJUC before, this is made by a company in Germany called Klanghelm. It's a one-man operation run by a guy called Tony, and I've spoken to him a few times, and he's a very, very cool guy. And he basically makes plugins that he likes and that he uses, and he designs them for himself. He makes tools that he can use in his productions, and he just so happens to sell them as well for really, really good prices. So you can pick up the MJUC for about €25, which is round about $25, round about £24. So it's all around about that £24, £25, dollars, euros kind of area. So it's really reasonably priced. Now what you get is you get not just one compressor, but you get not just two, you get 3 compressors in one. And a few of you will have seen this already, but I really like it. So I think we will use this guy here, and it's dead easy to use. Essentially you have this knob, you just turn this up to compress it, and then you use this knob here to make up the gain. And then you have an attack time and a recovery time, which essentially is basically the release time. And then you've got these 2 magic buttons, one called I stage, one called density. The I stage is basically, it's like some extra saturation and secret sauce that's between the different stages of the compressor. Tim Talks is here as well. My good friend Tim at Tim Talks Audio is here. I've not seen you for a while, my friend, but I'm very glad you're here. Welcome. And likely you will have seen this guy before, but for those of you that haven't, I thought I'd give you a wee guided tour as to what it does and why I think you should go out and get it, because it's great. It's a great compressor. And useful on just about everything. I don't think I've found a source that's not useful for it. Now, if you click on this word default, there's a bunch of presets here. So if you're not really sure what you want to be doing, then there's a bunch of presets here that you can use. So the one I'm going to use just now, just so you get to hear what it does, is the drum bus bass drum punch. We'll give this one a try. And this is going to put us in the Mark III. And it's cranked up the compression. And we'll see what this is like with a slow attack and a sort of fastish release. And we'll see what this sounds like. We may or may not like it, but we'll see. Yeah, it's absolutely spanking it. Probably too much. Okay, let's put this back in the track. Now you'll notice here that the sidechain filter, which is this SCF thing at the bottom, this has got a cool little pull-out tray. And you've got like an overdrive thing here. You've got this timbre thing, so if you want it to sound dark, you can really turn that over. Listen to how this sounds with the dark on. If you turn it all the way over to hi-fi, it's much brighter. You hear the hi-hat really, really nice and tight sounding. And that's kind of like putting a blanket over it, which gives it a little bit of a sort of late 70s kind of vibe to it. Let's stick that just after 12 o'clock. And the sidechain filter here is set to roll off anything below 49. So we're getting a lot of the kick drum out of the compressor. Now it's only compressing anything above 600. The other cool thing that you've got here is this punch slider. This is not in use right now. Now, I don't know exactly what is being referred to by this 1, 2, 3 and punch. I don't know what it adds, but it certainly does add punch. I can get this to turn on. Alright, so there we go. That's a quick guided tour of the MK3, and like I said, there's loads of presets for mastering, for mixing, for vocals, for keys, guitars, bass. So there's a bunch of drum presets that you can use, and you can actually create your own as well. So like if you save this one to file, then let's say you customize this a wee bit and you like to use this for just drum bus or drum overheads, you can save it. Very, very cool. And you can copy and you can paste to a different channel, which is equally fantastic. But then you've got MK2, you've got MK1. This is like the original one. which is very, very cool. And it basically has just this timing value thing that goes from 1 to 6. And I think this is kind of like, I think if memory serves, this is a fast kind of attack. And then this is a slow kind of attack, I think. If I remember it being that way round, I think. So if you put this in compression mode rather than limiting mode, I think that's what this does. This is like, it gets heavier attack-wise or slower attack-wise, I think. I can't quite remember what Tony told me way back, because I did a review of this many years ago. Like, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I can't quite remember what you told me about the timing for the MK1. But anyway, it's pretty intuitive to use, and I would recommend that you go and get this because it sounds beautiful. It really does. I've used this on a bunch of different things, and it sounds awesome. Whether you're using this on drums or you're using this on bass, it sounds great. Sounds great on vocals as well. And I definitely recommend you should go get this because you're getting 3 compressors for the price of 1 with a bunch of customizations that you can do. So definitely well worth getting, dead easy to use. And for the most part, you can just use your ears and then just be guided by the gain reduction, which is what this meter is here. It's it registers in VU. So, you know, you have to kind of convert a little bit in your head. But, you know, if you're seeing around somewhere between 3 and 5, this is good for kind of light compression. But then if you really want to slam, you can push it like over to like 10, minus 10, and it still sounds pretty good. And then you can drive the signal pretty good with this drive knob as well. Sounds really good. I recommend everybody go get this. And I'm not sponsored by Klanghelm in the slightest, but I'm just recommending this as a really, really good tool for getting some nice, not very clean, very beautifully colored compression. So well worth checking out. And that's basically all I wanted to talk about, really, in terms of tools that one can use that I recommend. They do make another one. There's this one here. If I get rid of this one, there's another really cool little compressor. This one here. This is the DC1A. I think this is free, and it's literally just got 2 knobs, an input and an output. And then you've got these buttons here. You've got deep, we've got relaxed, dual mono, which is if you're doing dual mono signals, and then you can do some negative compression, which I have to admit I've never done before. And there are no presets with this at all because, I mean, there's only 2 knobs. I mean, you know, why would you need that? So let's check this out. And we're just kind of kissing the lead a little bit. Let's crank this a little bit more. Yeah, pretty cool. This is well worth checking out, guys. Another really useful compressor that you don't really need to know that much about compression to really get it to sound good. 1 input control, 1 output control. Just balance the input and output, and Bernard Giranti twice removed. So give this one a check out. I believe this is free from Klanghelm, so you don't lose anything by going out and getting it and giving it a try. All right, and this is the current version 3.2.0, which I think was the update from about 3 months ago. So well worth getting. All right, let's go back over to the lounge and let's see what we got question-wise. Well, we don't really have anything particularly. Just Bob has asked, misspelling Jonny Lipsham Studios, but that's okay. Why should you use two EQs, one to boost and cut, and a second EQ to shape and process? Doesn't the dynamic EQ achieve both? Hope this makes sense. It's a good question. Quite often, a lot of mix engineers will definitely use more than one EQ. Now, you don't have to. No hard and fast rules about it. I only use multiple EQs if I feel that I need to. Now, one of the ways in which some mix engineers work is that they will do what you call broad brushstrokes with the first EQ. So you're using the first EQ to filter, and so maybe doing a high pass filter, low pass filter, and maybe notching out bad behaving frequencies, or just getting the broad shape of the sound done. So maybe you scoop out a little bit of 450 to 550. Maybe you scoop out a little bit around 2K. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It depends upon the source material. But I'm giving this as an example. And then maybe you do a little low pass filter about 10 or 12K, because you don't need a whole lot up the very, very top that nobody's going to be able to hear. And likewise, you can cut out the low rumble that nobody needs, again, because it's just sound energy that you don't need. Anything below 40, 50 cycles per second in a vocal track, you definitely don't need. I would argue even on a bass track, anything below that you don't really need. And certainly to shape a vocal, to start with, you want to make a lot of space for the vocal to fit in the mix. So you probably want to get rid of quite a bit of low end information, but you want to be careful that you don't high pass filter so high that you make the vocal sound too thin. So find that kind of sweet spot with your high pass filter, and then do some broad brush stroke shaping of the sound. And then what you would do is kind of like what I call the jigsaw puzzle mixing with the second EQ. And that's where you would go and kind of find, frequencies where there is a little bit of combating going on between maybe the lead vocal and the lead guitar, or lead vocal and a rhythm guitar perhaps, and you may go, okay, I can notch out a little of this guitar here, and I can maybe just give a little boost to the vocal at that same spot, and we call that complementary EQ. And certainly you would do that if you got multiple guitars. If you got 5, 6, 7 guitar parts, and you've got a big chorus with all of these guitar parts playing, then certainly you would want to make space for each one of them so that each one of them can be heard. And certainly you would start with making space for them overall. Now you can do this on a bus. You can say, okay, I'm going to do the broad brushstroke sounds shaping for the overall sound of all of my guitars, particularly my rhythm guitars, on a rhythm guitar bus. High pass filter, low pass filter, a little bit of broad cutting, and a little bit of broad boosting, perhaps. And do that all on the bus. And then you do the complementary EQ part in individual EQ modules on each individual guitar channel. And that's where you go to town with kind of little boosts here, little cut here, little boost there, little cut there on the different guitars to make them all fit inside each other, and so that you can hear each individual guitar part. So that's where, to me anyway, using more than one EQ can certainly help. Now, here's another reason why you might want to use more than one EQ. Different EQs will have a different tone. Think of them as tone boxes. So an EQ doesn't just cut and boost, particularly ones that are modeling analog hardware. They don't just boost and cut. They will add some harmonics, and they will add a little bit of coloration and a little bit of saturation, because they're modeled after physical hardware units. So those are going to be different to something like the Pro EQ. Pro EQ is very transparent. It will boost, it will cut. It doesn't add any color. Whereas something like a Pultec style EQ is going to add some color. It's going to sound like a Pultec EQ. And so not only is it going to boost and cut, it's going to add some flavor. So I would suggest maybe you use a nice transparent EQ like Pro EQ to do your broad brushstroke moves. And then you use something like the LA2A, not the LA2A, that's a compressor, something like a Neve or a Pultec or something like that, or an SSL, to actually do your sound shaping, where you're actually going to go and shape the sound. You're going to do a little boost here, a little cut there, to make that particular item in your mix fit nicely in the mix. And you're going to add some color. Like, you know, certain EQs are going to add some warmth. You know, maybe when you do a little boost, it adds a little bit of warmth. It doesn't just add some volume to that particular frequency point, but maybe it adds some character and some warmth as well. And this can be particularly useful on vocals, to make the vocals be nice and distinct and separate and unique and different in quality of sound to anything else in the mix. So maybe this is where you use a lot of your analog plugins, your analog modeling plugins on the lead vocal, and then everything else maybe you use just transparent EQs, so that the lead vocal has its nice, unique, and distinctive sound and flavor and color. So that is why I would use more than one EQ. Let's see, what else do we have? Donna says, I've used parallel compression on a drum kit. Can I use parallel compression on other instruments, including vocals? And do you have an example? I do. I have a video series on compression, and one of the videos in that series is all about parallel compression. Now, I do talk about parallel compression on drums, but you definitely can use it on other sources. And in fact, in some circumstances, I would recommend it. It depends upon the kind of music that you're mixing, but certainly parallel compression can add some extra punch and excitement to any element in your mix, not just percussive sounds like drums or bass, but certainly if you've got the drums and the bass having a lot of punch through parallel compression, then certainly you can do the same with other things, including lead vocals. One of my mix templates that I have, which I'll admit I don't use very much because I only use it for certain styles of music. I have my channels all set up. I have my busing system all set up, but I also have a bunch of parallel buses. And the idea of those is I'm doing pre-fader sends from my either my individual channels or my bus channels to the parallel channels, so that I can do parallel processing on those channels. I can parallel compress those channels. I can go to town and be very creative. And so quite often that's the part of my mix that I leave until the end, because I want to add some nice punch and just go to town and be creative with parallel compression. And I'll use different types of compressors. I'll maybe use the MJUC, I'll maybe use the LA2A, or I'll maybe use a FET style compressor like the 1176 in the FAT channel or something like that, to do parallel compression. And I'll do that on pretty much every source in the mix. I'll do that maybe on rock songs or something that's got a lot of momentum to it. So something that's very punchy, that's got a lot of transients in it. Parallel compression is a good thing. So rock music, funk, soul, R&B, you can definitely use some parallel compression on any source. Let's see. Should is a strong word. You don't have to use two EQs, but just like Jonny is saying, maybe you should use one EQ as a surgical corrective, subtractive EQ, and then follow it up with a colorful EQ to boost. Yes, exactly. Excuse me, 10 out of 10. Just Bob says, would you put an overall EQ on the master after the individuals on bus and on tracks? Actually, I would do it the other way around. I would start my mix on the master, and I would start by giving the whole song a little bit of overall shaping. The whole mix, even before I've started adding any plugins, anywhere else, I would maybe start with a little bit of very subtle EQ. And sometimes I give the high end just a tiny little hair of a lift. And again, it depends upon how well the song has been recorded. Maybe overall, I just think, you know what, this mix overall is just a little bit dark. Now, one of the things I can do is I can just go and give the top end a little bit of a lift with an EQ on the main output. That means everything gets that little bit of a lift. And I might find, as I go through the mix, I might find that the reason why the mix sounds a little bit dark is that everything has a little bit of a build-up of low mids. In which case, it's fine. I can go and get rid of my little upper end boost on the main output, and I can go and deal with the real problem if I find that there is a real problem. And that's okay. But certainly to start with, I can give it a little bit of a boost just to give the whole mix a little bit of extra air. I can certainly do that. And the other thing I would do on the master fader is I would also have a little bit of compression. And I'm only talking about tapping the needle with maybe 1.5 dB at the most of compression, just to pull the whole thing together before I really start mixing. Those are kind of the first two things that I do. And I do that on the master fader, the main output. And that's almost a standard thing for me, actually. And then, of course, I can always go back and I can kind of dial those back if necessary. But that's kind of where I start. So the whole mix is going through that EQ and that compressor to start with. And then everything else that gets done in the mix goes through that. And then, you know, one of the last things I'll do when I'm finishing up the mix is just make sure that those are still okay. And periodically through the mix, I will go and check and make sure that EQ is still fine and that the compressor is still okay. Maybe I'll need to dial it back a little bit because the cumulative effect of what you do in the mix is going to go through the main output. And maybe I need to dial back that compressor so that it's still only tapping the needle 1 to 1.5 dB. Because, you know, as you're adding stuff, you're adding compression to other elements in the mix, that's going to increase volume going into the main output. And then that needle in the compressor is going to start compressing the mix more. I don't want that. I want to make sure that it stays around about 1 to 1.5 dB. It's just a little bit of glue. That's all it is. What tools do the Beatles use? Well, the Beatles used tape machines. They also used a couple of different consoles that they either recorded through or they mixed through. But they certainly did make use of some EQs and some compressors, some actual hardware units that were then patched through the consoles. But that's not to say that you can't use kind of the tools that we have now. Dave says, I believe Beatles use EMI in-house processors. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. They used different mixers. Different studios in Abbey Road, if they were recording in Abbey Road, and they didn't always record in Abbey Road, but when they did, sometimes they would use the TG12345 console, sometimes they'd use a different one. Because there are different studio rooms had different consoles and different tape machines. Let's see, what else do we have? You started using of course, Jonny Lipsham Studios might be able to showcase something tonight. I don't have any Wave stuff to showcase, so you can certainly showcase something for sure, because I don't have any. Top-down mixing, yes, that's pretty much what I do. Kingston Dread is in the house. Good to see you, my friend, all the way over from the Caribbean. Just Bob says, okay, cool. I do an overall unmastered as well before I add stuff per track. Was curious if adding 2 or more EQs for sound boost and shaping could cause weird artifacting or sound issues. No, shouldn't do. pretty standard practice to use different EQs and different compressors. Actually, it is also fairly standard practice to use multiple reverbs and sometimes multiple delays. It's not something I always do, but sometimes I will have like a small hall and a plate reverb and a large hall reverb. And those are my 3 reverbs, and I will sometimes have different things going to one or more of those reverbs. Also, I like to have a slapback delay, which is really fast slapback delay, but I also like to have a nice sort of dotted 8th note delay that's maybe a ping-ponging delay. Now, some people, when they use delays, they like to have the delays really obvious and really upfront. The same with reverbs. They like to have them really obvious and really upfront. I don't like that. I have never been a fan of big reverbs, and I've never been a fan of really upfront, obvious sounding delays. But I have good friends who do. That's what they do. That's their sound. Their sound is a very obvious delay. For me, a delay should be felt rather than heard, and the same with a reverb. It should be felt rather than heard. And so I tend to bury my reverbs and delays quite a bit. I get them to the point where you can just hear them, and you only just perceive them. And for me, the idea is that they create space, they create ambience, they create a sense of width and depth to a mix. But I don't want them to be kind of there, if you know what I mean. Because I'm not a big fan of lots of effects. I like things to be fairly dry, fairly natural sounding. That's just me. That's just my personal taste. Possibly a reaction to music that I heard a lot when I was a kid, where there was lots of reverb. In fact, some of the records I heard when I was a kid, there was so much reverb, it sounded like they were singing in a cave, or the whole band was performing in a cave. And no, I don't like that at all. It just sounds, it's just way too much. It sounds like, hey, I'm going to add reverb. No, that's not me. I like everything to be, if I'm going to use reverbs or delays, I like them to be subtle and felt and perceived rather than heard. That's my mixing philosophy. But let's see. The Beatles, some of the first to use Fairchild compressors. Yes, indeed. John Lennon had a 660 for his vocals. I believe that is correct. In fact, I think the 660 might have actually been built for them. I'm not 100% sure about that. Let's see, what else do we have? Kyle says, parallel compression is like hot sauce. I put that on everything. Yeah. Now, there are some genres where parallel compression just doesn't work. It sounds wrong. For example, if I'm working on a big kind of spacious sounding jazz ballad with lots of lush, long chord tones from a horn section or from a big band, and there's, brushes on snare drum, and there's upright bass, and there's a little bit of sparkle from a guitar, and there's subtleties on the piano, Billy Strayhorn style, Count Basie style, kind of little, plinks, little, those kind of things. If you've got those kind of plinky plonks going on, I think some people call them, in the mix, and there's lots of space going on, then parallel compression is not going to help you. It really isn't. Putting, doing parallel compression on drums when you've got brushes. The thing with doing that is when you listen to the brushes, it's going to sound like you're raking the yard. It's just going to go, it's not going to be a very pleasant sound at all. And you know, that kick drum, instead of just feathering it very lightly on the quarter note, it's going to explode. It's going to go not really appropriate for jazz. I mean, even for, you know, something that's up tempo, you may use a little bit of compression on the drums overall, just to control things, just to tame the overall balance of the drum set sound, because the drum is the focus for up tempo jazz is going to be on the ride cymbal and the hi-hat with the foot on the 2 and 4. So that's where the focus is going to be. So you're going to maybe use a little compression with the ride cymbal, because you want the ride cymbal to wash a little bit, but you don't want it to completely overwhelm. But you also want that stick definition to come through. So maybe you would use a little bit of compression with a very, very slow attack and a sort of moderate kind of release, just to let that stick definition from the ride cymbal come through. And then you want to be able to control those, you know, the comping on the snare drum, and those kick drum bombs need to be controlled, tamed a little bit, but you're not wanting to make it sound like a rock and roll drum set. So how you do compression and EQ for drums in a jazz setting is going to be very different to how you do it for a rock number or a metal number, for example, where you're going to want to use a lot more compression. In this instance, it's subtle, but it's enough to just tame and control, and maybe even use the compressor as a little bit of a color box, just to add a little bit of excitement to that ride cymbal sound, a little bit of sizzle, that kind of thing. So it's all quite different depending upon what the style of music is. So I would never use parallel compression in a jazz setting. In fact, I don't use much compression at all. I'm using compression to glue, and I'm using compression to provide a little bit of extra tone in a jazz setting. And that's pretty much it. And I rarely mix any metal, to be honest, because I tend to go overboard. Kyle says, Jonny Lipsham likes to double his vocals as well. Yes, I do. That's kind of my signature sound for lead vocals, is a doubled lead vocal. With the second one kind of buried a little bit. What's shaking? I don't know what's shaking. Hopefully not me, and hopefully not this house. If this house is shaking, I'm concerned. We occasionally get an earthquake here in Scotland, because Scotland has like 2 fault lines that run through it. It might actually be 3. So we occasionally get a little bit of a movement. Maybe kind of I think the strongest earthquake we've ever had here is like a 4.2, I think, is the strongest one that we've ever had here in Scotland. And yeah, we felt that, but it wasn't like going to bring the house down or anything. Anyway, Bob says, when writing a MIDI drum track, is there a way to write in ghost notes? Yes, there is. Let's see, how long we got left of the show. I can show you this. Let me do a new song, and we will just create a little drum groove. So let's go over to Studio One, and we'll go for instruments, and we'll get the fat in here. Not because I'm going to use the loops. I'm not. I'm going to use the sounds. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a groove here, and then I'm going to add some ghost notes to it. So just to make things, let's see we'll go. Yeah, let's actually use this. Let's use this. And then what we'll do is we'll go and add some ghost notes to it. I need to get the loop zone on. And we'll loop this. And we'll go in here. Now let's see. Now, Here's how because I'm a drummer, here's how I like to do ghost notes. So I want to have one there, and we'll reduce the, there we go. And I want to have one here. And then I want to have another one next to it. And then I want to have one here. Let's see. And then we'll have another one here. Now we'll put one at the end here. Make that one pop just a little bit more. Now we'll go for here again. Another one right after it. And again here. So I'm going for kind of between the hi-hat and between the kick drum. And they need to be pretty quiet. Now, you're probably saying, is that even playable to have the backbeat on beat 4 and then the ghost note immediately after it? Yes, it is possible. It's what we call an upstroke. So I would play a downstroke for the snare drum hit on beat 4, and then as I'm bringing up the hand, I just drop the stick. I literally just drop the stick onto the snare drum as I'm coming back up for the next hit. So basically you go da 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 like that, da da da. So it is possible. I'm gonna let this one be quite quiet as well. And then we'll do this last one here. This one's not going to be a ghosted note. There we go. All right, let's listen to how this sounds. Let's take that one out. And there you have it. That is how you do ghosted notes. So The idea with ghosted notes is that they are what I call connections. They're just like connecting notes. And it's linear, which basically means they're not playing at the same time as any other limb. So if you've got eighth notes on the hi-hat, then they're playing, those ghosted notes are between the hi-hat notes, and they're also between the kick drum notes. So they by and large stay out of each other's way, which is kind of why it has that linear kind of idea. Linear being that no note is being heard at the same time. So that's what you want to do with ghosted notes, is keep them out of the way of the hi-hat, keep them out of the way of the kick drum, and make them nice, soft, subtle. They're meant to be felt rather than heard. Now, these ones I've made a little bit too loud in places because I was trying to get it done quickly. But for the most part, that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that your ghosted notes are low, are soft, and are felt rather than heard. If you can still actually hear them, they're maybe still a smidge too loud. And you probably want to grab them all and just dial them back a little bit until you can no longer hear them, and then boost them just a tiny, tiny little bit so you feel them rather than really hear them. And then even if at the moment they stand out, but as soon as you get, let's get rowdy in here. Let's see. Can I get this going? Why is it not playing? So let's put it in instrument mode. So those ghost notes now sound even more subtle when you've got something else playing, because your ear is listening to something else a little bit more. All right, there we go. Some of that subtleness, like using delay, only natural by a drummer. Yeah, as I just showed, you can program it, but it's only an approximation of what a really good drummer would do. But yeah, I hope that helps, Bob. It was a good question. All right, we got 5 minutes left. John Hawk says, why am I late? Very possibly because we started at 11 p.m. because of daylight saving time. I think I've said before that this show is always at 6 p.m. Central Time, whether it's 6 p.m. Standard or 6 p.m. Daylight Savings. It's still 6 p.m. The only person that moves is me, because your Daylight Saving Time is different to ours. So I make sure that all I have to do is just shift it back an hour and then come back to what to me is my regular time. But that's all that happens. This show is always 6 p.m. So whether it's, and that's in the Central Time Zone, 6 p.m. Central, whether it's Central Daylight Time or Central Standard Time, it's always 6 p.m. Sunday, Wednesday, every time. The idea is that for you guys out there in the United States, you can set your clock by it. And you can always predict it's going to be 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, 6 p.m. on a Sunday, whether that's winter, spring, summer, or fall. Okay? It's always 6 p.m. So there you go. I hope that helps with that one as well. Now, does anybody use any vampire notes anymore? I don't know. I think maybe back in the 16th century, there was a certain lute player who thought that vampire notes would be cool in the future. And I think he saw a long, long, long way into the future. And I think he might have been thinking of Jimi Hendrix. Or at least prophesying the existence, the future existence, and the future music of Jimi Hendrix. And being able to play the guitar with his teeth. But I think, Jimmy would have thought, hey, I'm the first person to do this playing guitar with my teeth thing. He was not. There was an English lute player, composer, songwriter, who wrote a lot of madrigals in the 13th, 14th centuries, who did play his lute with his teeth at times. It was his little party trick. So there you go. And yes, Billy is asking, Zoomulating? Yes, we should Zoomulate. So, whomever wants to host it, whether it's Mike or Billy, get your link into the chat. And I think an after show would be appropriate. For sure. That'd be great. Okay, there we go. Mike has put in his link. If you would like to join us for an after show talk, an after show discussion / party, that kind of thing, then you are more than welcome to come and join us. I will certainly be there. And it could be a lot of fun. We currently have about 22 people in here, which is not bad at all. I was concerned that we weren't even going to reach 20. So we've gone past 20. It'd be nice if for future shows we could get some more people in here. So if you know people who you think Sunday Night Live would be great for, or Songwriting Simplified on Wednesdays would be great for, invite them, get them along, send them the link to the shows, and that would be pretty cool. And I would like to welcome some new people to the shows. That would be great. If you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button below, hit the like button if you thought this show was good and you liked it, and hit the notification bell. Make sure you select all notifications so you don't miss a thing. 2023 is going to be chock-a-block with content coming. I've got a whole bunch of things. I know I keep saying it and, you're not seeing it materialize, but I'm still working on that content. But as soon as it is ready, it will get uploaded to this channel and you'll see it, and it'll be hilarious. It'll be good, and it'll be good quality learning for you guys. So, if that floats your boat, then hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single thing that I do on this channel. And otherwise, folks, I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. And until then, I'll see you over at the after show party. Good night, everybody. Take care.